Recently, I decided to read Land of the Lustrous, partly on the suggestion of one of my Discord members, and partly because of a meme that I saw. This is how I decide what I'm going to read. Funny memes. And let me just say that I really enjoyed it. So much so that I also watched the anime, and I loved it. It is a ridiculously well done adaptation of a great manga. But there's one problem with it. It's only 12 episodes long, and it was made in 2017. So the chances that we're getting another season feel about as likely as getting a proper Berserk adaptation. Now that's a real shame, because like I said, this is a fantastic adaptation of a great manga, and I really want to see more of it. And that got me thinking, what makes a great anime adaptation? See, I'm really more of a manga reader. I like being able to take my time and examine every page, really take in the yard and admire the finer details. As a result, I don't actually watch a ton of anime because I don't generally feel like I will get much out of it. For example, I've read all of the almost 800 chapters of Kingdom, but I've never watched an episode of the anime. Definitely not because of any clips I've seen scaring me off. I'm also a massive One Piece fanboy, yet I haven't watched a full episode of the anime since Zou. Because I don't hate myself. So what's so special about Land of the Lustrous? There are hundreds of episodes of One Piece sitting around waiting for me to watch them, more than 100 episodes of Kingdom, and God knows how many fucking isekai, but this is what I want. Just more of this. Why is that? Well, the short answer is that I really feel like I'm getting something out of Lustrous anime. That is the simple definition of a great adaptation. A great anime adaptation should provide something that you don't get by reading the manga. Now, for some of you, that something you're getting that the manga can't provide is simply that it's animated, and that's a totally valid way of looking at it. Or maybe you don't read manga at all, and in that sense, the something that an anime is providing is the opportunity to experience a story that you wouldn't otherwise. But for me, as someone that is primarily a manga reader, sometimes being animated doesn't outweigh the pros of reading the manga. But before we get too into this video is sponsored by me. There was going to be an actual sponsor on this video, but it fell through at the last second. So instead, I'm just gonna plug my Patreon. There's a link in the description, and just for just $5 a month, you get lots of stuff. So check that out if you want to support the channel, because the sponsors don't want to support me. There's gonna be another more in detail Patreon thing later in the video. So I'm just gonna throw you back into it. Have fun, enjoy it, and thanks for watching. Vinland Saga is a great example of an adaptation that leaves a lot to be desired. I've read the manga and watched the anime, and for me, the biggest thing the anime has going for it is the music, which really does add a lot to a lot of scenes. But I don't feel like the music or voice acting or anything else really outweighs the hits the artistic fidelity takes. That might sound like I'm saying that the anime is ugly or poorly animated, but that's not the case at all. It's just that the art of the manga is so beautiful and so highly detailed that an anime can't hope to match it without an unreasonable time commitment from the animation team. Take a look at this panel of Thorfinn's face and then compare it to the same frame from the anime. You'll notice the facial hair is one solid block instead of individually drawn hairs. Lines adding detail to the face are removed, and the shading is much simpler. Is this objectively worse? No, nothing is objective in art. And again, maybe the novelty of it being animated outweighs the hit the art is forced to take for you. But come on, the muscles just don't hit as hard in the anime. The pictures are moving now isn't always enough to make an adaptation worth watching. It needs something more than that. This is something that Land of the Lustrous does really well. The art of the manga is gorgeous in its own right, but wow. They didn't pull their punches on this one. Something that probably stuck out to you just now is that this is animated entirely in 3D, which is unusual. The anime community hasn't accepted 3D animation the way we have with a lot of Western media like movies and cartoons, but it's not shocking when you see what we've often been given. The problem is that 3D animation in anime has often been treated as a shortcut for difficult 2D animation rather than a tool with its own strengths.
That Titan looks pretty hard to animate. Make it 3D, but don't change anything about how it's presented. Perfect. Ship it.
Okay, that example's a bit unfair. They did get better about it in later episodes, but you know what's totally fair to criticize?
Oh, you know where this is going.
Oh my God! What have you done? Why? Why would you do this? No! No! Oh my God! Why? I don't understand!
Kentaro Miura was a brilliant artist that put masterpiece after masterpiece in those goddamn pages, and this is what you did with it? How dare you? Who thought this was okay? Why on earth would I watch this over reading the manga?
You know what's really funny about this example? This Berserk anime came out in 2016, and the Land of the Lustrous anime came out only 1 year later in 2017, yet it looks leagues better in every possible department.
Land of the Lustrous, or Hoseki no Kuni in Japan, is a manga created by Haruko Ichikawa and published in Kodansha's Monthly Afternoon. It follows a story of people made of gems and minerals living in a post-apocalyptic Earth. Think Japanese Steven Universe. Oh, someone's gonna be mad that I said that.
These people are called the Lustrous. One of the defining characteristics of this series' art style is the hair. Their hair is also made of the mineral that is their namesake, so their hair is drawn as shiny and slightly translucent. It leads to a lot of lines and changes in shading that would be really difficult to animate in 2D. Studio Orange, being a studio known for 3D animation, chose to make this an almost fully 3D animated series, which allowed them to depict their hair accurately and beautifully. But it doesn't just stop there. That's the really important thing. Animating the characters and their gorgeous hair in 3D isn't done as a cost-saving measure to avoid difficult 2D animation. It's done so that Studio Orange could utilize the strengths of 3 dimensions. In traditional 2D animation, every single frame of movement needs to be painstakingly illustrated by a very talented artist. This means even something as simple as a character shifting their weight slightly in a scene adds hours of work for the animation team. But with 3D animation, all of the animating is done by manipulating the pose of a rigged up model. So now that same character shifting their weight slightly becomes creating keyframes between the different poses and adjusting them to look natural.
Now that's a drastic oversimplification of how 3D animation works, and it's not always going to save time compared to 2D animation, but when it comes to animating complex objects like, say, a mech suit, which has a ton of little details and extra lines, yeah, this tends to save time.
It also opens the door to a mountain of opportunities that the third dimension allows for, because it isn't just the characters that gain a Z-axis, so does the camera. Now the camera can move back and forth more easily, or pan side to side, or rotate around the subject and capture them at all angles. This is the kind of thing that I'm talking about when I said that Studio Orange really knows how to utilize the strengths of 3D animation. They're not just saving themselves time here, they're taking the time they've saved and investing it in more subtle animations, such as small character movements that would be difficult to achieve in 2D animation. And they love to play with the camera, whipping it around in crazy ways throughout action scenes or slowly panning through an emotional scene. 3D animation in anime has gained the ire of a lot of fans because it's often used as a cost and time-saving measure and nothing more. Studio Orange is using it as its own tool that has its own strengths and weaknesses compared to 2D animation and running with that to create something really special. The picture is moving now often isn't enough for me to care about investing time into an anime. But it sure is when it's done well, and that's what we have here. What I'm looking for here is an awareness of the strengths of the medium. When you're adapting a story from one entertainment medium to another, I want to see this new version of an existing story taking advantage of the strengths of the new medium. I'm looking for pieces of media that tell the story in a way that only their chosen medium can. A great example of this is The Simpsons, actually. Early seasons of The Simpsons loved to break the fourth wall and poke fun at themselves with jokes about how cartoons are made. Such as this scene where Lisa tells Bart, cartoons don't have to be 100% realistic, followed by a second Homer appearing outside the window. Or this scene where Lisa and Bart are touring an animation studio, and the executive explains how they save time by reusing backgrounds, while the background of the scene repeats over and over. These are jokes that work specifically because of The Simpsons being an animated cartoon. These jokes effectively utilize The Simpsons' strengths as an animation. So when I'm reading a manga, I want to see it utilizing the strengths of a manga. One easy way is to play with things like paneling and speech bubbles. Take this page from Chainsaw Man where the panels are broken up with intestines instead of the usual white space. You can't replicate that in anime because the frames aren't being shown at the same time the way they are in a manga. So if the scene ever gets animated, I wouldn't want them to adapt it one-to-one because that would mean trying to shoehorn in something that wouldn't work in the animation medium. It'd be like taking a duck and putting it in an office building and then expecting it to file taxes at the end of the year. It just wouldn't work. But I also don't want them to change how the scene plays out. I want them to find a way to animate it in a way that preserves the intended presentation, but adapts it in a way that utilizes the strengths of animation. Some things just don't work when they're animated, so let's adapt that scene to work in this new medium. Let's take a look at an example of this being done really poorly. Here in chapter 857 of One Piece, we can see Nami saying something hurtful to Sanji, and the author illustrates this point by having the speech bubble come out of its frame to stab Sanji. This joke works because manga has speech bubbles, and having a character being stabbed by one effectively shows how the words inside them are hurting that character. Anime doesn't have speech bubbles, so how do they adapt this joke? Well, they just lazily animated an arrow coming out of nowhere to stab Sanji. I mean, listen, it still gets the job done, but it doesn't adapt the joke very effectively. Instead, it's just a lazy attempt to replicate the exact thing that happened. It's not using the fact that it's animated to its own benefit, it's just a lesser version of the joke made in the manga. There's simply no way to avoid it anymore. As a One Piece reader for more than 10 years, I cannot stand the One Piece anime. When people ask me if I recommend One Piece, I tell them yes. But only if they're going to read the manga. I am a firm believer that the anime is an absolutely horrible way to experience what is ultimately an incredible story. Quick thing before I get into this, because some viewers aren't very smart. Today we are talking specifically about the quality of the adaptation of One Piece. Me saying I love One Piece does not mean I love everything about One Piece or that I have no criticisms of it. It just so happens that I love One Piece despite its flaws. When I make a One Piece video, we'll talk about the quality of its writing then. That's not what we're here for today. There will be minor One Piece spoilers ahead. In case you live under a rock or maybe just aren't that into anime, One Piece is a manga and anime created by Eiichiro Oda. It follows a story of a crew of pirates searching for a legendary treasure known as the One Piece, left behind by the Pirate King. It is one of the most popular anime ever made, being translated into dozens of languages and sold all over the world. It is a cultural phenomenon in Japan, with many mangaka drawing their earliest inspirations from One Piece. Ever heard of My Hero Academia? Well, the author, Kohei Horikoshi, submitted fan art to be included in volume 23 of One Piece more than 10 years before his own series would take off. The reason I'm bringing up One Piece now is because this video is about what I look for in an anime adaptation of a manga. And if Land of the Lustrous is an example of an anime that I believe does everything right, then One Piece is the example of an anime that does everything wrong. Picking up where we left off before, the animation of Land of the Lustrous is incredible, and Studio Orange does a phenomenal job taking advantage of the strengths of 3D animation as their chosen medium. Remember, a great adaptation should provide something that you wouldn't get by reading the manga. So if we look at the animation of One Piece, what are we getting out of seeing it animated? Does a worse experience count? One Piece is a long series. The anime has been running since 1999, and as of today, more than 1,000 episodes have been released. For me, the breaking point was during the Dressrosa arc, the part of the story that covers chapters 700 through 801. Dressrosa was a really special arc for me because that's where the manga was when I finally caught up and had to start waiting for new chapters to release. There were a lot of things during this part of the story that I was excited to see animated, but to say I was disappointed would be a fucking understatement. One Piece is animated by Toei Animation, the same company that does Dragon Ball. Both series have done very well for them, but that doesn't mean they're a good studio. It was during the Dressrosa arc that the animation quality hit an all-time low. It's like Toei didn't even care. Like they thought they could shit out whatever garbage they wanted and people would watch it anyway. And before anyone hits the comments with an explanation for why it got so bad, let me just say that I do not care. There is no reason on this earth that would justify this being approved for broadcast. Yes, this is a real shot from the anime, and no, it is not zoomed in. It's not even a goofy frame in the middle of a movement. This is a still shot. Someone let this leave their studio knowing millions of people would tune in to see it. Dude looks like he just got the worst head of his life. There were all kinds of issues just like this throughout Dressrosa. They aren't even hard to find. Watch any episode from this time and you'll catch something bad. Both Land of the Lustrous and One Piece have a lot of action in them, and when it comes to animation, action scenes are an excellent opportunity for studios to flex their muscles and give you something new and exciting that you don't get in the manga. In manga, action scenes are presented using separate panels that attempt to illustrate the flow of events from one panel to the next so that you as the reader can understand what's happening. A great action manga makes it easy to fill in the blanks for what you aren't seeing, and in the case of Land of the Lustrous, it doesn't do the best job. One criticism that I have for Lustrous as a manga is that some of the action scenes can be really hard to follow. This definitely gets better as the manga progresses, but early on especially, it can be hard to determine how we get from one panel to the next. The beautiful thing about anime is that the studio can take those manga panels and fill in the gaps between them to create one seamless flowing action. When you're adapting fight scenes from manga to anime, you shouldn't change how the events play out, but you should absolutely change how they're presented, and this is what Lustrous does. The anime takes the steps laid out by the manga and utilizes the fact that it's 3D to create seamless shots of the camera whipping around to tie all the steps together. You won't always get to see the same perspective as you would in the manga, but you do get to see the same actions being carried out. They're just being done in a way that suits this medium better, and that is perfect. That's what you want to see. It breathes new life into a scene we've seen before and offers a fresh, new experience that only this medium can carry out. That means we're getting something out of this experience that the manga can't provide, and that's what any great adaptation should be able to do. But doing that is really hard. And Toei doesn't like doing things the hard way. You'll have fights in this series where nearly every shot is just a one-to-one replication of what was seen in the manga, while generally looking worse. And really, calling them animated is being charitable. A lot of these shots are practically a freeze frame with only slight movements added. What am I as a viewer gaining by watching this? Other than an awareness that it's a worse experience. It's an anime, for God's sake. The least you can do is animate things. Oh wait, I can think of something they added. Unnecessary flashback sequences and long, drawn-out panning shots that also look terrible. How is it utilizing animation as a medium? What benefit is there that you don't get by reading the manga? I can't answer that question, and that's what makes it such a poor quality adaptation. Now, some people will come to Toei's defense and tell you that this isn't the case anymore. They'll tell you the animation has gotten much better in recent years, and to those people I say, you're right. While it's hard to find statistics to back this up, I can tell you as a longtime fan that many people stopped watching the anime during the Dressrosa arc, and that includes me. I completely stopped watching outside of highlights, and I've never gotten back into it. This led to one of the biggest overcorrections I have ever seen in an anime. After Dressrosa, Toei very slowly but surely started improving the animation quality, and if you ask a lot of fans today, it's never been in a better place than it is right now. Now, I don't want to complain about good animation. Let's not pretend those hundreds of other episodes don't exist. Good animation today doesn't forgive lazy animation yesterday. I'm not going to suddenly call One Piece a good adaptation because of how they handled Gear 5th, when they still fucked up so bad with Gear 4th. That doesn't magically disappear. That being said, what they're doing now definitely resolves a lot of problems that I have. The animations look great, they go beyond what we're shown in the manga, and they give a pretty compelling reason to watch. But I'm still not watching. I'm still only tuning in for the big moments. Why is that? The thing about adaptation is that it's really hard. I consider myself an adaptation purist, meaning that I want an adaptation that is going to be as faithful to the source material as possible. I don't want to see additions or subtractions, I don't want to see the story told differently, and I don't want unnecessary changes. I want to see the story I already enjoy adapted to a new medium in a way that is faithful to the original work. As we discussed earlier, some things just don't work when they're animated, and that's when the studio should make changes. If they can find a way to present the scene in a way that better suits animation, they should do that. Like what Land of the Lustrous did with the action scenes. Studio Orange made changes to a lacking aspect of the manga that elevated the series as a whole while preserving the events that take place. What I don't stand for is changes that alter the story being told. Remember, it isn't enough for an adaptation to just be pretty, it also has to be faithful and consistent. And those are two things that One Piece does not have. At least when One Piece was animated poorly, it was pretty consistently animated poorly. Now, Toei funnels a lot of energy into the big moments while still letting the average in between episodes look okay at best. As a viewer, I don't want 1 out of every 20 episodes to look amazing, I want all of them to look amazing. And if I can't have that, I want all of them to look consistently great. I'll take a downgrade in the big moments if it means the small moments look good too. One Piece is much more than its fights, and everything deserves the same respect that the fight scenes get. The other issue of consistency comes from how the adaptation is handled. One Piece is a weekly anime, it doesn't operate on seasons. With most anime, there is a single director that has the reins that directs the look and feel of any adaptation. One Piece has many different directors that work on episodes on a rolling schedule because shockingly, it does take more than 1 week to make an episode of an anime. And not all of those directors seem to be on the same page with how to adapt this series. This has led to One Piece having more and more episodes that just aren't faithful to the manga. A lot of people, myself included, refer to this as the Dragonballification of One Piece. Toei Animation also handles Dragon Ball, and they seem to have allowed a lot of the practices they use for Dragon Ball to leak into One Piece, despite the two series being very different. In Dragon Ball, when characters power up, they start to glow with a colorful aura appearing around their bodies. This happens in One Piece too. Oh wait, no it doesn't. It happens in the anime, despite this kind of thing never happening in the manga. In Dragon Ball, characters can fly and they shoot around at the speed of sound while they fight. This also happens in One Piece. Oh wait, no it doesn't. Don't ask me why the samurai can suddenly fly in this scene, their feet are firmly on the ground in the manga. Now some people will claim that this movement towards more Dragon Ball style animation is actually beneficial, and it's why so many people are tuning in these days. And God, I have no idea where that take comes from. Take it back wherever you got it and return it. It's clearly defective, because not every director working on One Piece has started to do this. Togen Shirataki, Red Rock, Snake Man, fucking Gear 5th. All of these are great scenes from the anime that are adapted faithfully and are cool as shit, despite the fact that they don't use the fucking Super Saiyan power-up sound effect. One Piece can be cool if you let it be One Piece. It doesn't have to be Dragon Ball. I'll take this opportunity to remind you that I love One Piece, and it's that love that makes me so passionate about criticizing it. I want an anime that is representative of what I love, not whatever this is. And I'll remind you that One Piece is just an example here. There are things that One Piece does that would work very well for different series. There is no one right way to do any of this. But in this case, it just doesn't work. Maybe none of these things bother you. Maybe you like it anyway, and that's a totally valid opinion to hold. But objectively, you have to admit that even if you like it, it's not faithful to the manga. And even if you can convince yourself that it's faithful, it's crazy how inconsistent it is. Do characters exude aura or not? I don't know. It depends what episode you're watching. By contrast, Land of the Lustrous is well aware of the abilities and capabilities of each character. The Lustrous have a very acrobatic way of fighting, where they're jumping high into the air and then twirling around, or using the enemy's own body as leverage, or hell, jumping off each other's swords. And that's exactly what you see. They swing swords in the manga, so they swing swords in the anime. No shooting lasers, no glowing auras, no Super Saiyan power-up sound effects. It's Land of the Lustrous adapted as Land of the Lustrous. Not Land of the Lustrous adapted as Dragon Ball. I want to take a break from complaining for a minute to let you know that I have a Patreon. Did you know that I make all of my videos completely by myself? Everything from script writing to editing is done by yours truly. It's a lot of work, and if you join the Patreon, you get the opportunity to see how I do what I do through monthly Patreon streams, editing breakdown streams, weekly progress updates, and more. Not to mention that it is the single best way to support the channel directly, and I really appreciate that. I'm filming this video on a new camera that I was able to purchase thanks in part to the support from my patrons. So it really does go a long way to improving the quality of my videos. If you want to support the channel as well as getting early access to new videos and behind the scenes content, joining only costs $5. If you can't afford the Patreon but still want to support the channel, dropping a like on this video really helps me out too. Thank you so much for listening. Now, where was I? Oh right, you know what else anime has that manga doesn't? Sound. We really don't give sound enough credit in anime because it's one of those things you don't really notice if it's done well. Yet you really notice it when it's done poorly. Through doing my own videos, I've gained a much deeper appreciation for both music and sound effects. The right choice of music can be the difference between absolutely nailing a scene or letting it fall flat. And some of my proudest moments as a creator are times that the music I chose really nailed what I wanted to do with the scene. And sound design? Don't even get me started, that shit is hard. But when it's done well, it's one of the strongest tools a studio can use to draw you into their world and get you engrossed in it. You know who really nails sound design? That's right, it's Studio Orange. Bet you didn't see that coming. As I mentioned earlier, the Lustrous are people made of gems and minerals. So let me just ask you, if you were to imagine the kind of sound that the footsteps of a person made of rock would make, what would you hear? What would that sound like? That's right, it sounds like rocks clacking together. This is so simple, but it really sells the atmosphere of this world and its characters. The sound design always takes this kind of thing into account and manages to sell every little action the characters make. And don't even get me started on the music, oh my god, the music's really good, okay? I wish I could play it for you, but unfortunately it gets claimed on YouTube. Ain't no copyright protection boys for music. Unless...
Audio jungle.
No, never mind, that doesn't work at all. So if good sound design can draw you into a world and make it feel more real and believable, then the opposite of that is using sound effects that fit so poorly that they actively distract from the scene they're in. Hey Toei, what do guitar sound like? Oh, that's sure fucking annoying. Someone at Toei must have hired that duck from earlier and shoved it in the sound booth. Look, I get the guitar kind of annoying, but did you have to mix in an explosion sound effect and repeat the same exact sound effect on loop? It's distracting. It takes the focus away from what's happening. I'm not gonna sit here and claim that Toei can't do sound design. Katsuguri's future sight, Luffy's rubber snapping back, Gear 4's bouncing sound. They do have sound effects that work really well. But there's so many more that are just awful. Like electricity sounds, or sword slashing, or lots of footstep sounds for some reason. The thing is that back in the day, One Piece was a very cartoony series. So when they started animating it back in 1999, they tended to use a lot of cartoony sound effects and bombastic music to fit that feeling. But over time, One Piece has become more real, more serious in its themes and scenarios. Does that mean that cartoony heart is gone? No, Gear 5 is proof of that. One Piece is and always will be equal parts action and comedy. But the cartoony ass Saturday morning sound effects just don't feel right anymore. They run counter to what you're actually seeing. They kill the mood. You need something more subtle to support the more serious scenes. Toei is trying to force what used to work instead of evolving alongside the manga they're adapting. So let's say that the animation quality improves across the board. Episodes become more consistent in their presentation. Let's say Toei learns how to adapt One Piece faithfully. Let's say the sound design and music evolve to suit what One Piece is these days. Would that suddenly make One Piece a good adaptation? No. Firstly, because there are hundreds of episodes where they've already dropped the ball. But more importantly, all of these things are small in the face of the biggest issue that plagues One Piece as an adaptation. Pacing. You knew this was coming. Adapting the pacing of a manga is difficult because of the nature of manga as a print medium. You can't tell from looking at the page how long any scene should take to complete, or how long a piece of dialogue is meant to last, because that comes down to the individual reader. Like I said at the beginning of this video, I really like to take my time and examine every panel of the manga that I read, So I probably read a lot slower than somebody that reads the speech bubbles and turns the page. Even if we were to try and put a number to it and say how long it takes to read a single chapter, it would vary wildly depending on the contents of that chapter. Action scenes tend to take up more pages than exposition scenes while generally having less content, because the artist needs more room to show what's happening. 2 chapters that are 20 pages each could have a significantly different amount of stuff actually happening. It's the job of the animation studio to decide how much time to dedicate to each thing in order to make the flow feel natural and coherent.
An average anime episode is 24 minutes long, but generally speaking, a single chapter of a manga does not have enough content in it to support 24 minutes of voice acting and animation. The average manga running in Shonen Jump has roughly 15 to 20 pages per chapter released on a weekly basis. When one of those manga is picked up for an anime adaptation, the studio will take 2 to 3 of those 15 to 20 page chapters to make a single episode of the anime. Season 1 of Chainsaw Man is 12 episodes long and covers 38 chapters of the manga. Dr. Stone Season 1 is 24 episodes long and covers 60 chapters. Vinland Saga Season 1 is 24 episodes and it covers 54 chapters. They had to add a considerable amount of filler to stretch out those chapters of that length. There are a lot more childhood scenes in the anime than in the manga. The pacing of Land of the Lustrous is excellent. It's 12 episodes long and covers approximately 32 chapters of the manga. This means that each episode is packed full of events. Each episode serves a purpose in advancing the story. Each episode is special in its own way and worth watching. But the pacing of One Piece? Listen, One Piece is a long series. It's more than 1,000 episodes long, and a long anime must also have a long manga, right? Yeah, that's true, but it isn't as long as the episode count would make you think, okay? This anime is a grower, not a shower. As in, it grows in length and you don't show it to your friends. Because ever since its inception in 1999, One Piece has been a weekly release anime. For more than 20 years, there has been an episode nearly every single week. That is unequivocally impossible to do well. In the beginning, this was fine. They would adapt 2 to 3 chapters per episode, like any other series. But eventually, Toei started to catch up. They added in some filler episodes, even entire filler mini arcs, but it wasn't enough. And eventually, they needed to slow down. This is a graph created by Beastmaster on Reddit. It's a couple years old, but it illustrates the point well. At present, One Piece is averaging less than 1 chapter per episode. That is fucking insane. How do you even do that? There can't be enough content to work with. There isn't. So how do they do it? They drag it the fuck out. The average anime opening sequence is 1.5 minutes long. 18 out of One Piece's 25 openings are 2 to 2.5 minutes long. Each episode spends 2.5 to 3 minutes recapping the events of the previous episode. So at worst, you might go more than 5 minutes without seeing anything new in an episode. Then throughout that episode, they will add in unnecessary flashbacks that don't exist in the manga, or they'll flashback to events that happened earlier in the episode. Scenes will last an uncomfortably long time, beyond the point that they've shown what they need to show. There will be slow-moving, panning shots that last far, far longer than they need to. Reaction shots will also be much longer than necessary. At the end of the episode, there will be a preview segment that lasts around 30 seconds. That's actually not that bad. That's a pretty standard practice. Surprisingly, One Piece actually didn't do an ending sequence for many years. From episode 278 on, there was no ending. But they recently reintroduced it, probably feeling pressure from catching up to the manga. So that's another 1.5 minutes of nothing new. So at the absolute worst, in a 24-minute episode of One Piece, there will be only 17 minutes of new content. And that 17 minutes will be incredibly awkward and drawn out. Hell, even calling it new content is generous, because they abuse flashback sequences like their entire audience has early onset Alzheimer's. Or maybe they'll just take the same 30-second set of animations and repeat it 3 separate times in the episode. Just as an example. And it's only getting worse. Because while there is a new episode of One Piece virtually every week, there is not a new chapter of One Piece every week. Oda, the author, is an incredibly hard-working man that has been writing and drawing One Piece for more than 20 years, and it has taken its toll. Anyone familiar with the manga industry will know how detrimental it is to the creator's health. It's incredibly demanding and unforgiving. Japan really needs to work on that whole
work-life balance thing. As a result, Oda has had multiple health complications over the years that have forced him to slow down. On average, 1 week out of every month will not have a new chapter of One Piece, meaning there's only 3 new chapters for every 4 episodes of the anime. Sometime in the future, the total number of One Piece episodes will surpass the number of One Piece chapters. In fact, the most recent episode as of writing, episode 1074, adapts chapter 1047. The count is already nearly 30 ahead of what it's adapting. That means that on average, throughout its entire lifespan, One Piece adapts only 0.98 chapters per episode. And that number is only going to keep getting smaller. That's insane. Generously speaking, that 1047 chapters should represent only 419 episodes. More realistically, it should be 349. One Piece is a long series, I'm not going to deny that, but damn, it ain't 1074 episodes long. This is the main contributing factor that makes One Piece so unbearable to watch. Some people will say that the manga has poor pacing. I've never agreed with that personally, but holy shit, trying to watch the anime is genuinely torturous. In Land of the Lustrous, every episode serves a purpose. Every episode advances the plot in some significant way. That should be the goal of any media, anime, TV, or manga. Every new edition should contribute to the story in a meaningful way. Attack on Titan, Iron-Blooded Orphans, Kill la Kill, they all do this well. With One Piece, there are episodes that kind of just don't move the story forward. If you skipped them, you wouldn't be very confused. That's bad. One Piece is the only anime that I know of where the fans have taken it into their own hands to re-edit entire arcs of the story to fix the abysmal pacing. And all of this comes before the absolute worst sin that the anime commits. The one sin that an adaptation should never commit. Like I mentioned, One Piece has a lot of filler. And even though all of it sucks, a filler episode that introduces a non-canon storyline in between canon events isn't that bad. I still don't like it. But you know what's worse? Non-canon tangents that actively hurt the writing. Jumping back to Dressrosa for a minute, in the middle of the penultimate battle between Luffy and Doflamingo, Luffy used a new move. Something he never used before. Gomu Gomu no Spring Bullet. A move in which Luffy combines his rubber powers with an ability called Haki to make his legs mimic springs, allowing him to hop around quickly. But this move is ultimately fruitless, as it doesn't help him hurt Doflamingo or really change anything about the situation he's in. And you guessed it, this did not happen in the manga. This is a completely made-up ability that Luffy will never use again. So now, if Luffy's ever in a situation where spring legs might be useful, the viewer's going to question why Luffy didn't use them. And the answer is because, canonically speaking, this is not an ability that Luffy possesses. But an anime viewer won't know that. So it actively drags down the quality of the writing by creating a power for Luffy that not only did nothing in the situation in which it was present, it will also never be used again. That is bad writing. There is no other way to put it. Some viewers might say that even if this is a non-canon ability, it is still within the realm of possibility for Luffy's powers. But that's neither here nor there. The problem isn't necessarily whether or not it's possible. The problem is the implication it has on the story's progression. And even then, there are examples of this kind of thing happening that are not possible. In Wano, there's a scene where the character Big Mom falls into the water and her fire elemental dives into the water to save her. The motherfucker is made out of fire and created using a devil fruit power, which for those of you who don't know, is a power that weakens the user when submerged in water. Water has also been shown to negate a number of devil fruit powers. So in what universe is this scenario possible? I don't know. It certainly didn't happen in the manga. Once again, this creates questions that will never be answered and showcases a scenario that should be impossible for no other reason than to pad out the length of the episode, as Toei tries desperately to wring 24 minutes of content out of literally 10 pages of manga. And these are both just examples. If it was just these 2 instances, maybe I could forgive it, but there are so many examples of this kind of thing. Hell, even in a recent episode, I saw some viewers confused about whether or not Luffy is capable of creating lightning, because Toei decided to add in a scene that doesn't occur in the manga and doesn't really make sense. And really, if anyone out there wants to tell me that deviating from the source material is okay, then tell me why there are 2 Fullmetal Alchemist anime. This is why I refuse to watch One Piece, even though there are thousands of episodes available, yet I'm sitting here wishing, praying that there will be more episodes of Land of the Lustrous. This is what separates a good adaptation from a bad one. I'm not saying that One Piece should do everything the way Land of the Lustrous does. These are both just examples, really effective examples that illustrate my points. In my opinion, Land of the Lustrous does everything right, while One Piece does everything wrong. Well, okay, not everything. They have Frankie's voice actor, Kazuki Yao, who looks like he should voice Frankie. Okay, the entire voice cast in One Piece fucks. That's the one thing it does well. I get asked a lot if I will ever cover One Piece on my channel. The answer is yes. I have big plans for this series. There's a lot of things that I want to talk about. But when I do, I will not be using any anime footage. Part of that is because Toei is brutal in their enforcement of copyright, but it's mostly out of protest for what the anime has done to one of my favorite manga. A good anime adaptation is to be able to provide something that the viewer won't get from reading the manga. Animation that presents the story in a way that manga can't. Sound that brings the world alive. Music that makes you feel the emotions of the characters. Voice acting that brings those characters to life. It should also be faithful to the manga with few to no alterations to the story. If changes are made, those changes should have a reason behind them, such as adapting the scene to better fit the animation medium. If there are additions, they need to stay within the bounds of what is shown to exist in the universe while adding something meaningful to the story. If there are subtractions, they shouldn't change how the story progresses or hurt the writing as a whole. More than anything else, a great adaptation should lift what it's adapting up, not drag it down. One Piece and Land of the Lustrous are just examples. There are dozens of ways that you can do this that work and even more ways to fuck it up. Things you see in Land of the Lustrous won't work for every series, and things you see in One Piece might work in something else. These things apply to more than just anime too. You can do this with any adaptation. Movie adaptations of books, TV adaptations of video games, live action adaptations of anime. As a big Scott Pilgrim comic fan, I don't like the movie. Michael Cera doesn't play a faithful Scott Pilgrim. It's a different character, and it isn't what I want to see. There are also situations where you can acknowledge that something is a bad adaptation, but still a good overall product. Invincible is this for me. I've read the Invincible comics and watched the show, and the show is not a particularly faithful adaptation. The story progression is different, lots of characters are completely different, and plenty of things have been cut out of the story. But it's still a good show that I liked watching. I would even consider a lot of the changes to be good. I mean, did we really need to see the whole human bomb thing? Come on, no one cares about that. Hell, the One Piece live action isn't a very faithful adaptation either, but I had a lot of fun watching it. It can still be good without being a good adaptation, and all this is to say that, yes, Demon Slayer is a great adaptation of a terrible manga. You know, it's kind of the opposite of One Piece, which is a terrible adaptation of a great manga. Man, I'm making the Demon Slayer fans and One Piece fans mad today. The comments are going to be interesting. Ultimately, it all comes down to what you as a viewer are looking for. I'm looking for the studio to show a love and care for the manga that they're adapting that will bring it to new heights. I'm looking for an adaptation that I will get something out of. An adaptation that offers a new but familiar experience that only animation can create. And more than anything else, an adaptation that's fun to watch. One of the adaptations I talked about today, I would happily watch again. The other, I can't be bothered to watch the oversupply of episodes that are available. I'm sure you know which is which.
Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed the video. I want to give a massive shout out to all of my Patreon subscribers, especially my gamers, True, Lucy, and Best Tiger, as well as all of my simps, Marzak, Belgara, Bill Nye, David D, Degenerate, Jimmy B, Skippy, Ninja, Noodle, Remu Nerd, Amim, and Victor. Remember, you can join the Patreon for just $5 a month, and it is the best way to support the channel, so I really appreciate it. If you want to head on over, there's a link in the description, or just leave a like on the video if you liked it. That helps me out too. When this video comes out, I'm either already at or about to surpass 50,000 subscribers. And I just want to give a huge thanks to all of you for that. That is a crazy milestone to hit, and I am so proud and so happy and so excited about that. I do apologize for the wait on this video. I know it was a long wait for a bit of a shorter video by my standards, but I promise I have a lot of big projects I'm working on in the background that were eating up a lot of my time. So expect big things in the future. I'm going to be getting more big videos out next year, and I'm really excited to show you guys what I've got cooking up. Thank you for watching as always. Remember, I do live stream here on YouTube if you want to catch me and chat sometimes. Otherwise, you can join the Discord if you want to hang out with the community and chat with me. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Appreciate you as always. And read One Piece. It's good. It's really good, actually. Have a good day.